Hi! Have you ever wondered how a company decides how much product they should manufacture this month or this week? Or how they decide how much raw material should we order, especially if there's a 2-week lead time and a short shelf life? How about how many waitstaff does a busy restaurant need on a Saturday night? The answer, of course, is forecasting. This short tutorial is going to take you through a method of forecasting called time series analysis. Let's take a look.
It isn't always easy to tell the future. Coming up with a solid forecast to present to your organization can be a daunting task. For forecasting in the short term, time series analysis is the type of forecasting that a business might use if they were trying to figure out what to have ready for their customers. If you have a crystal ball to see in the future, then you're in good shape. If not, then you might want to consider using your historical data to predict what we might need to have ready for our customers in the future. Here's some demand information for a 12-week period in the past. This demand information could represent the revenue that was sold, the number of products or cases of products that were sold. What we could do is we could try and use this information and just use a simple moving average. And all that means is that we'll take a previous number of periods and we'll average it. If we decided that we wanted to use a 2-period simple moving average, we could begin our forecast in week 3. So all we would do is we would put a formula in where we are going to take the cell B3, add cell B4, close the bracket, divide by 2, and this is the forecast that we could use for week 3. And as time goes on, the oldest piece of information drops off and we pick up the new piece of information. We can just click and drag, and there's what we would call our 2-period simple moving average. We could do a 3-period simple moving average. And in this case, we'll begin our forecast at week 4. We'll put our formula in. So we'll take period 1 plus period 2 plus period 3. We'll close the bracket. We'll divide by 3. And again, we can click and drag. So the only question in using a simple moving average is how many periods do I want to include in the average? We may decide that a weighted moving average would be more appropriate for our business, in which case we still need to decide how many weeks of data do we want to include in our weighted moving average. Let's assume that we've decided to use weights of 0.5, 0.3, and 0.2. We'll begin our forecast in week 4. We'll take our week 3 data and we'll multiply that times 0.5, and then we'll add on our week 2 data and we'll multiply that times 0.3, and then we'll add on our week 1 data and we'll multiply that times 0.2. Because I know I'm going to copy this formula, I need to make sure to anchor these 3 values, which is just an F4, to make sure that I'm using those same numbers all the time. And then I can click and drag, and there is my weighted moving average using 0.5, 0.3, and 0.2. I might prefer to use only 2 periods of data. So in that case, I need to have 2 weights. I may choose to use weights of 0.7 and 0.3. Here I'll begin my forecast in week 3. I'll take the week 2 demand, I will multiply that by 0.7, then I will add on the week 1 demand and I'll multiply that times 0.3. Again, I need to anchor those 2 values. And then I can click and drag that. And that's our 2-period weighted moving average. We may decide to use exponential smoothing for our forecast. Exponential smoothing is a very simple forecasting method. We use something called a smoothing factor, and the smoothing factor can be any number between 0 and 1. I'm going to decide to use a smoothing factor of 0.2. We also need to begin with some previous demand information. Let's use week 1 as our previous demand information. We had 655 units actually demanded. We also need to start off with a previous forecast. Let's assume that our previous forecast was 650 units. To begin our exponential smoothing, we start with the previous period forecast, which was 650 units. Then what we'll do is we want to adjust that. So we're going to add on, we take our smoothing constant, and we want to multiply the smoothing constant by the error. So in this case, the error is going to be the actual demand subtract the previous forecast. And we need to make sure also that we anchor this decimal 2. So we'll just F4. So that gives us a forecast of 651 units. What we're doing essentially is we're taking the previous forecast and we're adjusting it either up and down by a portion of the error. So now we can just click and drag and we see that that's our exponential smoothing. The greater the smoothing constant, the faster our new forecast will react to the error.
There you go. Simple moving average, weighted moving average, and exponential smoothing. All time series analysis methods of forecasting for the short term. And of course, once the math is done, there is quite often a little bit of adjusting that goes on for known events that are coming in the future.
And keep in mind that complicated is not always necessarily better.